Alright, so moving on to the next segment, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the breaking news that has transpired in the sport of boxing with Errol Spence Jr. activating his rematch clause against Terence "Bud" Crawford. So, the news broke out earlier today that Errol Spence Jr., former unified welterweight champion of the world, activated his 30-day rematch clause against Terence "Bud" Crawford after suffering his first career loss in July, losing that fight by technical knockout to Terence Crawford in a unified welterweight championship fight. Trainer of Terence "Bud" Crawford, Brian McIntyre, confirmed that Terence Crawford texted him saying that Errol Spence has activated his rematch clause. There is no official date of when this rematch will take place between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. So, I'll be sharing my thoughts on this news breaking and the thoughts of the rematch happening between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Now, is this a big time fight? Absolutely. You are getting a rematch. Now, this is what this rematch is going to have implications to. Compared to the first fight, it is going to lack drama. And it's going to lack history behind it because this time around, there will not be any championship belts on the line. This time, this fight will be taking place instead of the welterweight division, taking place at the super welterweight division at 154 pounds compared to the fight being at 147 pounds the first time around. So instead of making history as the first ever undisputed champion at the welterweight division, this time, this rematch will be, the biggest storyline will be, will Errol Spence claim redemption? Will he get his wrongs, how he got defeated and dismantled against Terence Crawford the first fight? That is going to be the biggest storyline and the rematch that will take place very soon in the sport of boxing. So the question is, will the weight difference make a difference in the rematch? And to me, I don't think so. I don't think a 7-pound weight difference makes a big difference in the second fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. You look at what happened in the first fight. Errol Spence got dominated, dismantled. From round 2 all the way to round 9, it was Terence Crawford's world. And we were all living in it that night in the sport of boxing. And Errol Spence didn't look right to me. And when I mean didn't look right, he didn't look like that caliber fighter that was an undefeated former unified welterweight champion, pound for pound, one of the best in the world. This Errol Spence looked defeated after he got sent to the canvas by that knockdown in the second round. I believe that he lost confidence. I believe the game plan went right out the window. He became one-dimensional in the fight, just looking for body shots, not looking for any combinations to lead up to potentially knocking down Terence Crawford. Only going for body shots, and Terence Crawford just countered everything that he wanted to throw at him that Saturday night. So to me, I agree with Errol Spence. There is no excuses for what happened the first outing against Terence Crawford. And his trainer, Derek James, Errol Spence's trainer, Derek James, and others in the sport of boxing believe that Errol Spence was weight trained. Now, you cannot say that he was weight trained. You cannot use that as an excuse. Errol Spence has been fighting in the welterweight division his whole entire boxing career. He knows how to make the weight. He knows what it takes to fight at that respective division. And he's a natural welterweight because, like I just said, he's fought that division his whole entire career. And you really can't use that excuse either. I understand that he might have came out and said that making weight was a problem. But didn't Terence Crawford? Didn't Brian McIntyre say the same thing? Both fighters had to make weight. Both fighters had enough time to make the adjustments to rehydrate after the weight cutting. One team did, the other team didn't. If Derek James believes that's the reason why Errol Spence lost that fight. But it just showed the better man, the better boxer, and the better man won that fight. No weight drain, no dehydration excuses. The better man won, the better boxer won that fight. Now, hopefully, when we see this fight happen at 154, it's more competitive than the first fight that we saw at 147 because after the feeling out process in the first round between Crawford and Spence, it was all Crawford's world. Complete, utter domination from round 2 all the way to round 9. And you have to say, with a 7-pound weight difference, the advantage still goes to Terence Crawford because he showed in the first fight He has the speed. He's way faster than Errol Spence. It showed in the timing when Errol Spence went for big blows, big body shots. Earl Spence came in and capitalized with straight counter punches, jabs that were very effective during the fight, jabs that dropped Earl Spence a few times and sent him to the canvas for the first time in his career during that fight. And you have to think about it. Terence Crawford was tagging Errol Spence with jabs that had a lot of power behind it. You give him 7 more pounds and 7 more strength to him, the advantage still goes to Terence Crawford against Errol Spence fighting at 154 pounds. So, next question is, was this the best time for Errol Spence to activate the rematch clause? And my answer to that is no. I do not believe this was not the best time. Now, under these circumstances, the contract said the first time that these fighters fought, win or lose for whoever walked out of that fight, whether it was Terence Crawford or Errol Spence, the loser of that fight had a total of 30 days to activate the rematch clause. Whether that was going to take place again, I think the loser got to pick the weight as well. So instead of Errol Spence picking the fight at 147 again, they get a undisputed championship fight again. He now wants to move up to 154 to fight Terence Crawford. And he only had 30 days to activate it, by the way. But I don't think this was the right move. And I do think that Errol Spence would have been better off getting his feet wet at 154 in his new division before fighting Terence Crawford again. Because let's talk about it. You have the chance to get your feet wet, fight some great opponents by the end of the calendar year 2023. You pick up a big significant win or two, and it builds your confidence to fight Terence Crawford again in the rematch, where you build confidence at 154. You see what you can do in your new weight class. Not jump the gun and go after somebody that just dominated, dismantled you the first time around. And I think at 154, if I was Derek James, this is what I would have told my fighter, Errol Spence. I would have mapped out, hey, why don't you go fight Keith Thurman at 154? Why don't you go fight Tim Tszyu at 154? I think that would have been a better route for Errol Spence instead of jumping into a rematch with Terence Crawford. Both of those fighters, Keith Thurman and Tim Tszyu, are nothing to sneeze at. They're two elite fighters, in my opinion. And I do believe that it's someone like Errol Spence who does not believe in tune-ups. This would have been a good test to see if you're ready for a Terence Crawford rematch at your new weight division at 154 pounds. So if I was Derek James, this is the game plan, the strategy that I would have gave Errol Spence to build confidence as a fighter and to fight Terence Crawford again one day down the line after you get your feet wet in the new division. So I'm going to close this segment out by saying this. I do give credit to Errol Spence for going straight for the rematch. No doubt about it. He's proven that he's a warrior. It showed in that first fight. It showed his whole boxing career. It showed it in his whole damn life, overcoming so many obstacles and accidents that should have put him in the grave. And he's still here with us today because he has that fighting spirit. And it shows that outside the boxing ring, going through those obstacles and tragedies in his life, and he showed it in the boxing ring, even though he got dominated, showed heart, grit, and determination to keep fighting all the way until the end against Terence Crawford. However, I do believe if the same outcome happens, not if he loses to Terence Crawford, that's okay. But if the same outcome happens again, if he gets dominated, dismantled, looks uncomfortable, sent to the canvas 3 times, referee, but nearly got dropped for a 4th time before the referee stopped it in the 9th round. If that happens again to Errol Spence and this Terence Crawford rematch, I believe it hurts Errol Spence's confidence, it hurts his pride, it hurts his joy for the love of the sport of boxing that he has. And I fear that as an Errol Spence fan, Errol Spence walks away from the sport of boxing and retires if he gets dominated the same way against Terence Crawford in the rematch. But those are my thoughts on Errol Spence activating his rematch clause against Terence Crawford. We will be seeing Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford Part 2 very soon in the sport of boxing.